before I get up here. Joking. But going over what we're talking about, trying to think about the right way to present it. And one of the things that always amazes me about this church in this place is that no matter who is here or missing, if we have a huge crowd or a small, we sing like 1,000. I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful noise, even in the back of the auditorium. And man, it's a really encouraging thing this morning that I noticed, and I'm sure a lot of you did as well. We got the holidays coming up, and so we're going to not talk about them at all today in the lesson. Mostly because I've kind of accidentally stumbled into a series. Kind of. This is what really happened, is these are the glasses I've had on for the last couple of weeks, and so it's the way I've been looking at things through this lens of reality. What is real? What is true about the world that we live in? And we talked about this 8 Sunday mornings ago when I spoke 2 times ago, and we really just emphasized that when Jesus speaks, he's not speaking in some sort of different realm. Like, he is fully human, and when he stands before people and tells them, this is the way it is, he's right. He's telling you something about the reality in which you live that is true. And we talked about how funny that can sound sometimes, because it's not like he says things like, this table is here, right? But he's saying things that are much deeper than that, much more true, and have resonated all throughout time as truth. This motif of the way that Jesus views reality has, like I said, kind of turned into a series. The last time that I spoke on a Sunday morning, we talked about forgiveness and the reality of forgiveness, or forgiveness in reality. I don't remember exactly what the title was. You know my relationship with sermon titles. I hate them. So when we talked about this, though, we said that Jesus tells us to forgive people, and that is what we should do. And we asked the question, how does that make any sense? Because when I forgive, if I cancel a debt, then I didn't get paid back for what I was owed, which means I have less. I've been taken advantage of. And through the lesson, we noticed how forgiveness is actually a view of reality that is incredibly beneficial, not only to you, but to everyone that you come into contact with. Because forgiveness has this unique ability to stop evil in its tracks. It's not an eye for an eye. It's a canceled debt. We talked about how the worldview, or the view of reality that espouses forgiveness, is a view of reality that can help heal you. We talked about the physiological benefits of forgiveness and how this idea of forgiveness can help mend relationships, that it can bring people who were estranged back together, and how this view of reality, this forgiveness, the reality of forgiveness is that it ultimately makes the world a better place. This is the view of reality that Jesus is presenting. He's presenting a view of reality that heals the brokenness inside of you, mends your relationships, and makes the world a better place. That's really good news. When the Bible says that Jesus came proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and then he goes on to tell you all these values of the kingdom, that's it, right there in a nutshell. It's a view of reality, not just spirituality, but true, genuine reality. This is the way the world was made to work. Everything else is a perversion or a fracture. And so when we listen to Jesus, we see that his view of reality is the right view of reality. Like we saw in the last lesson, forgiveness is the right thing to do all the time, and it's a benefit, and it is a life-giving force in the world. So today, look at Luke chapter 9. A claim of Jesus is that we're going to examine today. Luke chapter 9 and verse 24. It's not one we're unfamiliar with. Luke chapter 9 and verse 24, Jesus says, "Whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it." Now, right off the bat, you're probably not shaken up by that, right? You're probably not confused or perplexed by that verse, because it's like a well-known Bible verse, and we've done our best to understand it and sort of put it on our bookshelf of, yeah, I think we vaguely know what Jesus means here. But if we just take it literally, if we just take it at face value, this sounds remarkably untrue. Let me say it this way. I've been attempting not to die for 30 and a half years now. I'm still alive, so what he said isn't true. Do you see what I'm saying? He says whoever wants to save his life will lose it, and whoever wants to lose his life for his sake will save it. And so, what do we do with that? Because I'm fairly certain that most of us have been attempting to save our lives for as long as we've been alive, and we've all succeeded fairly well so far. Now, the other part of this is that it almost sounds intentionally backwards, right? You're not going to get what you want. In fact, as soon as you try to get what you want, you're going to get the opposite. You want to save your life, you're going to lose it. You want to lose your life? If that's what you're trying to do, you can't even do that successfully, right? You're gonna save it because you've lost your life for my sake. Now, what we normally do with this verse, and y'all know, big fan of and. I don't think this is wrong, all right? But what we normally do with this verse is we take it and we spiritualize it, right? And we say that, well, what Jesus means here is that if you give up your life physically for him, then you will receive life spiritually. Yeah, for sure. I think that's part of what Jesus is saying here. I think that's a huge part of what Jesus is saying here, right? The idea of if you choose to hang on to this life physically, then you put your life spiritually in jeopardy. Sure, I think that's totally an important thing and a true thing that Jesus is saying. But right? I think there is more to what Jesus is saying than just that spiritual side. I think that this is a claim about reality that Jesus is putting out in his teaching that is true. I think it's not just a claim that is spiritually true, but is true right here, right now, today. And here is the claim. The claim is sacrifice is the way to life. Let's jump over and look at this idea of sacrifice, because it is a very biblical thing. In fact, one of the things you probably remember, other than the incredible stories in Genesis, from your first read through the Bible was how difficult and confusing Leviticus can be, right? Because you get to Leviticus, and it's all of these sometimes graphic depictions of sacrifice, animal sacrifice. There's talk about what kind of animal to take, where to put it on the altar, what to do with its blood, how to arrange the animal. It's a lot. It's very a lot, okay? You read through it, and it's a bit foreign to our sensibilities in some regard. And on top of that, it just is strange. The specifications that like in Leviticus 24, there's this provision for taking a lamb that is 1 year old, right? Not an old decrepit lamb that you can't use and is on its last legs anyway, but a brand new unblemished lamb that is 1 year old. And you think about that, maybe in our context, I don't know how many sheep you have, but in their context, a sheep was a really big deal. You think about what a sheep represented. It represented new clothes every year, because every year you'd shave that sheep and harvest the wool. It represented, in some ways, landscaping. This was your landscaping crew. You had a pasture and you didn't want things to grow up, that's where the sheep would roam. It would represent, in other ways, work, or it would represent fertilization of the ground. That's all things that a sheep would actively do to benefit people. And it had, I don't know exactly the lifespan of a sheep, but let's just assume it's about the same as a dog, 15 to, if you're lucky, 20 years. It had 15 to 20 years worth of wool to give you. It had 15 to 20 years worth of landscaping work and of ground fertile. Like, this lamb had a lot of potential left in it. And the commandment is kill it. 1 year, kill it, burn it. Seems wasteful. Seems counterintuitive. That seems like the wrong thing to do objectively. There are other passages that talk about things like drink and grain offerings. And what these are just about as simple as it sounds. You have a drink offering, you take it, and you pour it on the altar. You don't drink it, you don't use it, you just pour it on the altar. If you have a grain offering, you take the grain and you burn it. You don't make bread first, you don't use it, but you just take the grain and you put it on the altar and you light fire to it. There are other offerings that specify that a bull from the herd is to be used as a sacrifice. Again, Like, we don't think about a bull as much more than a good steak or a nice burger, but like a bull in their agricultural context was a lawnmower, it was a tractor, it was like protection in some small way. Like, a bull was an enormously beneficial thing, and not just while it's alive, but a bull, after it was slaughtered, was food. It was a lot of food. And not only food, but they would use the hides, and you would build clothing, tents, tools out of the bones and the ligaments of the animal. All of those things are ways that you would use a bull in this context. Unless you burn it, then you can't do that. So again, we look at this idea of sacrifices in the Old Testament, and it's a bit perplexing. They're commanded to do these sacrifices, but they seem unwise almost. They seem challenging to our sensibilities. And then you have other stories that we're already 11 minutes in. We're not going to take all the time and look at them, but you have stories like Abraham and Isaac, where God says, Abraham, go offer a sacrifice of your only son. Or Jephthah, which is a really weird story, where Jephthah promises to sacrifice the first thing he sees when he gets home, and it happens to be his daughter. And then he does. And it's a little uncomfortable. The idea of sacrifice is a challenging idea because it fights against the reality that we generally live in. The reality of use everything you can. Make the most out of your means. Don't waste the things that you have, right? Get what you can get out of everything that you are dealing with. Okay. So maybe we need to understand what sacrifice is. Because when we look at the picture in the Bible, it's very foreign, and that's okay. We're not ancient Hebrew people, okay? It's okay for that to feel a bit foreign. Their context was much different than ours. But we've got to ask this question. Otherwise, we're going to build the rest of this on a foundation that is not understanding the Bible on its terms. What is a sacrifice? Like, a very basic definition of a sacrifice is giving up something of value for something of greater value, right? There's always this second half of it that is, you were giving up a thing that has value for something better. Now, here's what I do not mean, and I am not going to spend too much time on this. I do not mean that when you give God $10, he's going to turn around and give you $100. There have been a lot of people who have made a lot of money off of that lie. That's not what we mean. It's not a formula. It's a relationship, going back to a whole lot of other things we've talked about in the past. What I do mean is that sacrifice holds out this idea that if you give up something that is real and valuable, you're doing that in order to bring about something that is greater but not yet realized, right? And so it's in a big way, it's an act of faith, the giving up of something real and valuable in order to bring about something greater but not yet realized. And you do this by trusting a structure of reality where loss leads to gain. Does that sound familiar to anything that Jesus said? Well, yeah, that's what he's espousing in this passage in Luke chapter 9. In Luke chapter 9, he says, if you wish to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, then you'll save it. So there's this idea of sacrifice embedded into this statement. It's something much more than just a false statement of how we decide to handle our life. It's something much more than just a true statement about our physical and spiritual lives. It is a view of reality that rings true right now because it's about sacrifice. What do you give up and what do you hope to gain? Jesus believes that loss precedes gain, which is why the statement that he makes can be true. So if this is all sacrifice is, if sacrifice, very simply put, is giving up something of value to get something of greater value, based on a view of reality where loss leads to gain, where death leads to life, where less leads to more, if that's what it is, giving up something of value to receive something of greater value, then the question next is, why should we sacrifice? And it feels pretty obvious, right? Because a sacrifice is a way of giving something up and then receiving something better. Okay, so why should we sacrifice? The simple answer, for something better. But it's a lot more than that. What is the something better that you get out of a sacrifice? Like I said, it's not the health and wealth gospel of give $10, get 100 later, right? But it's a concept of sacrificing gives more to you than it takes from you. I want to think about just a couple of things here. It does something to you. Sacrifice does something to you. The first thing it does is it forces a declaration of value. When you sacrifice, whatever it is and in whatever context, you are inherently making a declaration of value. You are telling everyone else, that's important to me. Well, hey, I remember when I learned that people who didn't go to church got 2 Saturdays to sleep in. Today, you've all declared value. Church is more important than sleeping in. Listen, that's a small, silly example, but is it not a sacrifice? You gave up something good. Does anyone disagree that sleeping in is good? That's a unanimous agreement, right? Yeah, right? You gave up something good in exchange for something better. You couldn't sleep in and have the singing we experienced this morning. So you gave up something good in exchange for something better. And by doing that, you have declared a value. This is better. This is more valuable, more important to me to be here today. It does that in every sacrifice you make is an inherent declaration of value, which serves to do 2 things. It reminds you of what's most important to you, and it is a public statement of the things that are valuable in your eyes. Secondly, why should we sacrifice? Well, for something better. What does sacrifice give back to us? It's a constant reminder of the source of things, right? I don't know if you do this, but anytime something is lost or broken or if I have to give something away, my brain just automatically starts trying to justify it for me. It wasn't that big of a deal, right? I didn't really like it anyway. You know what? I'm happy it's going somewhere else. I try to make myself feel better, like instinctively, when I give something up. Well, you know what? That's one of the things we get to say when we make a sacrifice. I sacrificed this, but sleeping in is from God, right? Rest is from God. I gave that up in exchange for something better. You know what? I gave away this thing, but was it even mine to begin with? Man, where did that even come from in the first place? Everything. Like James says in James 1, every good and perfect gift is from God. And so, when we sacrifice, it's a reminder of the source of the things that we are giving up. Lastly, sacrifice requires you to relinquish control. When you sacrifice, you have to let go of the thing. And we talked about how foreign it feels to make a sacrifice of a lamb 1 year old, and with all of that potential and all of that good that could be done. Well, you know who else thought this way? It was a guy named Judas. When Jesus was at the table, reclining at table, and the woman Mary came in, and she poured the perfume, the ointment, all over Jesus' feet and anointed his feet. Guess what Judas says? He says, well, that was kind of wasteful, wasn't it? Couldn't we have done a lot more good with that perfume? We could have sold it, and we could have given the money to the poor. And you know what? I think he's probably right. That made a lot of sense, you know? That seems like kind of a wasteful thing to do, to just throw expensive perfume all over the floor, all over someone's feet, which are just going to get gross in a couple minutes anyway when they walk outside, right? Like kind of makes sense. It doesn't feel great identifying with the villain of a story, does it? And so you think about this. The sacrifice of a young lamb, the sacrifice of a bull, Judas, and looking at the money. When we make a sacrifice, it forces us to relinquish control. It's no longer about what I could have done with the perfume or the money. It's no longer about what I could have done with that lamb for my community. It's about what God can do. It is an act of letting go and letting God, to use a popular phrase. When we sacrifice, it forces us to relinquish control. It's not about my ability to do these great things or my ability to accomplish what God wants me to accomplish. It is an act of surrender, knowing that God can accomplish it with this bull or the next, with this lamb or the next, with this perfume or the next. He is ultimately in control and not me. And so sacrifice, why should we sacrifice? Well, man, it's a declaration and a reminder of value. It's a reminder of the source of every good thing, and it is forcing you to relinquish control. Man, that sounds beneficial to me. But I think there's another metaphor that makes this idea of sacrifice even come into better focus. Look at John chapter 12. Interestingly, all three of the other Gospels, which is how we talk about John all the time, right? All three of the other Gospels and John. All three of the other Gospels have some variation of almost exactly the same phrase that we read in Luke chapter 9. In Matthew chapter 16 and Mark chapter 8, Jesus is accounted as saying almost identically the same thing. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Then John shows up, and this is his sort of account of this same saying. You'll hear the similarities in this verse. Look at John chapter 12 and verse 23. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." Anytime Jesus is talking about being glorified in the Gospel of John, he's talking about being crucified. And so he's talking about his death. All right, verse 24, he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me. And where I am, there will my servant be. Also, if anyone serves me, the Father will honor him." You hear the same sentiment, yet this time it's in the context of Jesus' death. He says, with a metaphor, I'm kind of like a seed, right? If a seed, if you hoard seeds and you stockpile seeds, you might have, I don't know, a road trip's worth of snacks. That's about what you got. I don't know, sunflower seeds keep you awake, anybody? That's what I use, right? You get like a road trip's worth of snacks if you hoard seeds. What happens if you take those same seeds and you go out into the field and you let them rot in the ground? You sacrifice the seed, if you will. Well, you're giving something good up to realize something even better later. Sacrifice. And that's what Jesus says. If a seed dies, if it falls in the ground and dies, then suddenly it bears more life. Somehow, in Jesus' view of reality, the path to life goes through death. In Jesus' view of reality, if you want to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you want to lose your life for his sake, you'll save it. There's clearly a connection here. Jesus' diagnosis of reality says that life that is clung to is lost, but life that is given up is multiplied. How much more foreign could that sound to us? It's almost like Jesus is living in a totally different reality, one in which going to the cross made perfect sense, one in which sacrifice was the way to bring life and blessing into the world. And if we're honest, it's actually still the way we live. Think about this. The next question that we asked in the forgiveness lesson and that we'll ask here is the question of how do we sacrifice? All right, so if Jesus says this is a good thing and his view of reality is right, then how do we do it, right? How do we sacrifice? And the answer is you're already doing it. You're already doing it every day, all the time. It's everywhere. You are making sacrifices constantly, knowingly or unknowingly. I mean, simply think about it like this. Jesus says, you save your life, you lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. This is describing a view of reality that we live every day. Let me give you a illustration, all right? When I was little, okay, I was really like Rosie's age, like 1 or 2 years old. My mom said I used to walk around the house with a toy, the most important thing in my whole world in that moment, this toy. And I would cling to the toy until I found a different toy. And then what happened? Well, you drop that one and grab the new one. And that was now the most important thing in the world. And my mom said, actually, that you could follow me around the house without seeing me because you just follow the toys, right? Now, listen, that's a silly example, and yet it's what we do every day. Ever since we were children, we make a declaration of value. We decide to sacrifice one thing for the benefit or to receive something else. We all do this all the time. And in certain contexts, this truth rings very, very true that Jesus is telling us. I want you to think about it in the financial context. Well, you could go spend a whole lot of money right now, right? Spend a whole lot of money right now. Or if you give up spending money now and put that money away somewhere else, well, what do we know about compounding interest? You receive something much better back later. Okay, well, let's think about relationships. They're really difficult. Any context, marriage, children, parents, family, coworkers, any context, a relationship requires you to give something up. It's most evident in marriage, right? If you choose to say, I do, you have told that person, let me rephrase, you've told every single other person, I don't. If you wanted to I do with everybody, then you would never I do with one person. If you choose marriage, you are by implication not choosing or sacrificing any of the other life that you would have otherwise. Similarly to having children. Having children suck the life out of you, is a blessing. It's hard. It's a sacrifice. You have to give up something now. I haven't played pickup basketball in months. That's something I love to do. I'm not thrilled, but I'm happy to do it because there's the hope of something better when my kids come home for the holidays and they're excited too, right? You give up something, no matter what you do. You're making a sacrifice. And so when we say, well, how do we sacrifice? You're doing it all the time in marriage. You're doing it in school. You're doing it in your finances. You're doing it this is a law of reality that relates to almost every facet of your life, whether it's fitness or finances or school or your social life or like the thing that you are sacrificing, the thing that you want is being sacrificed for. So not only this, but sacrifice is, in a lot of ways, the foundation of any functioning society. A group of people has to come together and in some way say, I'm going to give up what I would want so that all of us can have more. These principles run all through the Old Testament, and in some small way, we see that happen today. Not all of us is getting what we want all the time as a group. As a family, you go any unit size you want, as a family unit, as a church body, as a city. We all have to make a sacrifice in order for the society to function. Society is built on the idea of giving up something now and receiving something better as a result of it. That death is the way to life. The death of an idea or the death of time or the death of desire is the way to life on the other side. So the question is not only how do we sacrifice? Because we're all doing it all the time. But the question is far more about choosing your sacrifice. What are you sacrificing for? And like we did with the lesson on forgiveness, I want to ask just a couple of very practical, reasonable questions that I think will help you use this view of reality in the way Jesus wanted you to. Jesus says reality works like this: death to life. Sacrifice to blessing. This is how the world works, and we can see it in our world. So then how do we take that view of reality and live it? How do we live that view of reality? Well, the first thing we got to do is be honest. Just like last time. Man, we love lying to ourselves, me included. We really like saying things that make us feel good but aren't all the way true. And so when we start talking about sacrifice, we have got to start by being honest about where we are. Honest about our situation. And the first question we need to answer honestly is, what do my actions say about what I value? Take inventory, look at your actions, look at your life, look at how you spend your time, your money, your energy, your relationships. What are you doing right now, and what does it say that you value? You're going to get a lot of different answers on this. You might value your alone time, right? You might value success. Whatever your answer is, you've got to be honest. Look at your actions and maybe play this game. If I saw someone else acting exactly the way I'm acting, what would I judgmentally say about them? We're so good at judging others. We're so bad at judging ourselves, right? Like, think about it that way. But be honest. What am I choosing? What am I choosing? Because whatever I'm choosing, I'm sacrificing the rest. Okay, so then, secondly, ask yourself, what do I want? What am I actually aiming for, right? In the world of finance, am I aiming for pleasure? Am I aiming for security? Am I aiming for success? What is it that I want, right? And then you have to evaluate which of those match, right? So question number one, what do my actions say about what I value? Secondly, what do I want, or what do I intellectually value, right? What do I actually value? I want this. Third, what actions match what I want? Because you're probably not doing nothing that you want, right? If we're being honest, you've probably got some things that don't match what you truly want and other things that do. And so evaluate your actions. Okay, if this is what my actions said that I want and this is what I truly want, then what part of this matches this? After that, you know which parts don't, all right? Then you know which parts are not aiming at the thing you truly want. And the fourth step, and I always recommend writing it down, actually write things down. It's good for you psychologically. Make a game plan. Make a list for how to accomplish what you want. In this list, you should have actions that you want to take, as well as the implicit things you're willing to sacrifice. What am I willing to give up to look like Jesus? To be a good father or mother, to be successful in my employee. What does success exactly mean for me in my context, right? Write it down. Make a game plan. And then go forth and fail, because that's how we do things, a little at a time. Ultimately, sacrifice is what God did for us. Ultimately, sacrifice is what Jesus willingly did for us. They gave up something of value in exchange for something of greater value. Jesus gave up his life like a seed for the potential lives, the potential eternal lives of the entire world. John 3, God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him won't perish but will have eternal life. Now, if sacrifice is a declaration of value, what did God just say about you? I mean, this is what sacrifice is. And then if sacrifice is a way of viewing reality, if that's true, that this bizarre backwards thing that Jesus says about sacrifice is actually the way the world works, and it is, man, imagine what would happen if not one person chose to give their life up, but if a whole church of people did. What kind of impact could that have on a city? What kind of impact could it have on your home if just you chose to sacrifice selfishness? Sacrifice is a way of seeing the world that Jesus preaches. Not only does he preach it, but he practiced what he preached by giving his life up to produce life for everyone in the future. This is a whole new view of reality. It's one that says the path to life is by going through death. It's a view of reality that says sacrifice has the power to heal relationships in our homes, the power to heal brokenness inside of us, and the power to heal the whole world around us. When Jesus came preaching the gospel, this was part of the good news that he came to tell us, that he has a whole view of reality that can change the world. It's up to us if we choose to live it, because ultimately, he's right. The invitation this morning is the same as it always is. Open any time of the day. Make the ultimate sacrifice in return for the ultimate sacrifice. Jesus already gave up his whole life for you, and all he's asking is the same in return. Give your life back to him in a sacrifice. Not just a spiritual thing, but give your life to Jesus. Submit your view of reality to his view of reality. And when you give up what you want in the moment, blessing and life comes on the other side of this. And so if you need prayers of the church, or if you need to give your life to Christ in baptism, whatever you need, we love you. Come, let us help you while we stand and